So in this video, we're going to talk about the relationship between JavaScript and web design. So up to this point, we've been talking about programming languages more generally, thinking conceptually about some of the structures and some of the elements that are common across programming languages in general. We're focusing in on JavaScript in particular, though, and part of the reason is because it is a coding language that can be used and is very commonly used with web design. So I just wanted to establish what the relationship is there and how this fits into other coding that you've done with your markup languages. So there are some different components in web design as we've talked about already. So just a little review here of how this all works. So you start with page content. And then you have your page structure that's governed by your HTML code and your page design that's governed by your CSS. And as indicated in the diagram, the HTML code is separate from external things like images and apart from the style as well, which can be a separate file, a CSS file. It can also be integrated directly in the page, but it's a separate type of coding that governs that specific styling. Okay, so this is what we've had so far in terms of our web design. The JavaScript then is the last component here. JavaScript deals with function. And this is where you have your functionality like fillable forms, buttons that you see on pages, basically anything that requires logic, that requires input and output and performs tasks, right? That's what we've been talking about programming languages doing. So when you're in a situation where you want to maybe modify content based on user input, or provide, display information on the page, or display information with a style of a particular kind based on some kind of conditional factor. That's when you're getting into the territory where you need coding. That's where you're getting to the territory where you need an actual programming language, not just the styling or the structure of HTML or CSS. And that's where JavaScript comes into play. So what can JavaScript code do? Well, several things. First of all, in terms of its form, it can be included within your HTML coded file. So just like when you would put CSS code up in the head of the file in style tags, you can use script tags in HTML to incorporate it within a page. You can also code it as a separate file, just as you can with your CSS. And why would you do that? What are some of the features that JavaScript brings? Well, it can be used to actually generate HTML and CSS code on a page. So JavaScript works very well with these markup languages so that you can actually dynamically write HTML code and CSS code on the fly using your JavaScript to change the appearance and content of the page. So not only the appearance with the CSS, but also the content itself of different HTML elements can be changed using JavaScript code. So those changes can then be based on user input. And you can also use those features to provide output. So JavaScript is very powerful and it works very well with your markup languages to modify different elements of the page, both structure and style, and even the content. So it allows you to create dynamic features of the page and really add that user interactivity that would help you make full use of the capabilities of the web. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how JavaScript works with your web design languages with HTML and CSS. The main thing is it gives you all the robust features of a full programming language to be able to make changes based on conditions or user input, but it is very, very friendly with the syntax and with the features of HTML and CSS.